I used to tell my students in class, if you're taking a test and you don't know what it is, just write down connective tissue, because all tissue is connective tissue. So, okay, so let's see. So here's our yaw position. This is this bone moving this way. So when I say it's in a yaw position, you can pigeon toe the horse by having more wall here and less wall length off of the sole plane than here. So that can cause a horse to pigeon to turn in or to turn out. So you can get this movement. So there's our yaw, here's our roll, this way. So if I have, how do I roll the bone? This would be ideal if we can get it, but it's very hard to get it because it's always fighting. Gravity always wins. But the closer you can, this bone is on a horse. And I'm not going to tell you that's the best thing for the horse, but I can tell you that horses that on a horizontal plane have less pathologies to bone. Unless this can be horizontally planed, this flat foot, but the bone is too low, it's pushing into the sole. So we'll cover that in a lecture or in one of these little PowerPoints. And then you have this pitch. This is the one, because like if you're in a submarine, you go into a 5-degree pitch. That's going down this way, downward pitch of 5 degrees or up, So this would be a forward pitch and a backward pitch in my language. Some people say positive palmar angle or negative palmar angle. And most of the time I'll use palmar negative because that's what everybody's used to hearing. If I said, well, that bone's in a pitch, it doesn't work. So those are your three axes that we work with here and here. Okay, so if you want, we can go through this little video. Let's say 14 minutes long now. And all this will talk about is a little, it's a warm up to, okay. So let's see if I can get this to work for us. Any questions right now about the different planes that we can put the bone in through trimming? Or the horse can naturally wear itself into a positive palmar angle. If a barefoot horse is moving its toe down and allowing the heel to grow, we're no longer here, we're now like here. So when we get here, and see the toe here? See how much bone is missing in this toe? That's because the bone's in a positive palmar angle. So if you take this conformation, that automatically allows the bone to do this. See?
Really strong heels.
It's going to put a big bend in your sole plane and the toe, and it's going to wrap the sole around the bone. Because if I had a horseshoe, an open horseshoe.
I think there was some behind. Oh, there was on the table earlier some of the soles.
Oh, they're moved. Yeah, those soles that were, I don't know.
So if you trim to the plane on that foot, it's going to be floating at the toe.
Well, how can we lose bone in the toe area? Raise the heel. How can we lose bone or develop more stress in the heel? Lengthen the toe. It's the plane. Pathology can be based on the plane of the P3 bone. So if your bone is in this pitch or in this position in the foot, I would immediately look at toe area. I'll probably see a flat toe. You see, this is a flat foot. See, this bone is losing. It's losing edge because it no longer has this curvature in the arch. It's a flatter arch. So the original bone is missing. All of this is pilostitis through inflammation of bone. And that's because this one's not so much in a positive palmar angle, it's more horizontally planed, but it's pushing down and it's pushing into the sole and it's doing this. So now the sole, and one of those feet that were here, good example of bone pushing into the sole with the sole wrapping around the foot. So, okay, so let's take a look. Any other, I don't know.
I need to start carrying around a mouse pad in my truck. That thing's great for that.
To explain everything.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I mean. So here, let's take this bone because, okay, just by looking at the bottom of this bone, I can tell you the sole, what the sole look like. Because this is slipping up. What's going to cause it needs something to wrap around. It needs to push into something for it to wrap up. So if I take this, if I could elevate this up, let's say I have a horseshoe here, then I can push into the sole and you can see the sole moving like that. See, or if it's in that roll position, we'll get this on this side. Whenever that sole, when the bone pushes into the sole and starts wrapping around, you're gonna have bone loss and you're gonna have inflammation and pelosteitis developing.
So when it wraps around, is that kind of when you, if you can like excavate with your nippers around the edge, but you don't have enough to take it down to that level?
Yeah, that means that your sole body is below the proximal border of the wide. It's prolapsing outward.
Okay.
See, I'm going in the wrong direction here. But
When I
see
do that
here,
a lot, I go with my nippers.
if I
to
looked
find
at
that,
the,
but I don't take everything.
if you have a wide white line and it's shearing apart, that's primarily the bone is pushing into the sole and is pulling the sole away from the wall.
Okay.
And causing it to wrap up.
Like if
So
it's not really flared, but you have a wide.
no,
line
that could
line.
create a flare. Most flares are drop soles.
Okay.
See, if you see a flare on the horse, because when this goes down, look what's happening. I'm flaring the wall. The flare is now this way. If I have length of wall, like I say, you want to straighten up a foot, trim it every 3 weeks, and just make sure the horse is being a little active. And now usually clean up. You can eliminate bar shoes and all that stuff, but because horse owners want to ride their horses so much and use them, they work the hell out of them, and they don't appreciate this part of the horse's, foot.
But don't you think some of this stuff has to do with loading and compensatory gait?
Contribute to loading. It's pretty
Yeah.
much all loading.
Yeah, but I think it's all compensatory gait, so when they tip, say, to the lateral side, well, you have to look what happened between, a diagonal, for instance, and then, I think.
Yeah, well, I was
Yeah.
mentioned that. See, how do we load the toe quarter here? Let's say I just want to shear out the white line in the toe quarter and cause this the sole to prolapse a little bit here. I've got to position the bone in an area in a way that will load it. So unequal heel lengths. If I have more heel here, I get this. So I have all of this maybe loading here. But if I go into a yaw, I get this. Now I'm simply loading the toe here and destroying bone here and destroying soft tissue. And maybe even destroying sensitive lamina, because when one of those feet, I don't know where John put them, but one of those feet had a lot of scar tissue building up. Well, if you're building scar tissue here on your white line, you're losing vertical depth of your sensitive lamina. So now your foot's gonna start looking like this. Look how short it is. So if I trim this foot to the sole plane, it's gonna look like this. They'll say that horse doesn't have any foot. Well, it's got foot, it's just a lot of damage. So it's a tendency to leave these feet longer because they want the foot to look like it matches the horse. So when they leave it longer, they're causing more damage. See?
And you're saying that you can affect that yaw, so is that through the shoulder?
Well, it could just be in the joint. It could just
Well,
be
it's also
twisted.
the myofascia, because where I palpate those points, this is a gateway for myofascia. The navicular
Brady, do
sling
you have your
and the heel.
I have my
and
dissecting
the,
stuff.
you have your truck here?
Not my trailer.
You have myofascia,
okay.
so you have
I
a lot
just
of
would like a shoe.
proprioceptive stuff.
Mhm.
This is why it's important.
I can get a
to
hold. I think they have some in the cabinet out there. Just
Just
a
a
regular
regular.
flat shape.
Because otherwise you're pushing,
Well,
you're
I don't
pulling.
want to
What's
no,
happening
I don't want
is
to Epona. I would just.
So that yaw can be the capsule around the bone.
I could do an
Because
Epona
it's
also.
shearing
Come
or
show the
the
differences. What
What do you need?
Well, Brady's gonna get it. I'm looking for a horseshoe. Oh, here. Never mind. Got clips. Might not work. This one.
Yeah, he has one. What else do you need?
These. Brady's just found a bigger one.
So that is also, and I think everyone ignore that,
Is that good?
Yeah, that'll
because
work.
the myofascia is piezo. So proprioception is based on that, right? Because it's past currents and information. So we were talking about that this morning. So if you don't understand where actually the band of myofascia are, you're still making kind of problem. The problem, people don't even know what can happen in terms of morphology. So we're moving along. You made me totally depressed this morning with private conversation. I don't think people are even going to get what you're doing. Thank you, Mike.
Do you have any images of the anatomy of the fascia in that area?
Well, it's everywhere. it's not just the anatomy, you have it everywhere, you have it through ligaments, you have it through muscle. This is basically bags after bags that are holding things together. When we do the dissection, we can see the myofascia. That's what holds bundles of anything. I'm going to get a book and we can look at it later, but let him finish this.
Well, here we have a horseshoe. So this could be represent a horse. This space here could represent a horse, this from the horseshoe, or this could also represent length of wall, more wall on the horse, a barefoot horse with wall length. So if I take this and then put this sole here, you notice that when I push down, you see how it rolls up. Well, you can pick up a roll. Your whole sole can roll up here. So one of the advantages to understanding UST is when you trim to the white line, this wouldn't even touch your shoe, but it's a sign that it's rolling up. So with this, you got to get this to come down. How do you get this to come down? You have to do that. That's the advantage here. With this shoe, you have more coverage here. So when I push down here, I don't have as much lift up here. Plus, when you put your...
This is what the barefooter are right in the same point of saying peripheral loading. You know, that's why the shoes don't work. I mean, because you're letting unless you pack, you're letting the foot drop through. Like horses that have really, really good feet, it doesn't affect them, but all of them end up having problems because of the way we shoe them. I think a lot of those pathologies you see are also caused by metal shoes that don't give you support, you know. And I think all those horses should have at least have a caudal support, you know, not that weird shape where you have the fork pushing into the foot, but something, you know, in the caudal area. That's really important. That comes down to
Well, sometimes, but see, if you have deep connoisseurs, but like here, if I want to deepen my connoisseurs, I can raise the heel up, and that will give me more wall length, probably, because I'm using wall. That probably can do that better in a PowerPoint, what I'm talking about. But usually when you raise the foot up on a horse, that's like this type of foot, because this would be in a positive palmar angle in the foot normally, because that's just the way it is. It's not a horizontally plane bone, because from day one it's starting to do this. If the horse is, like you look at a horse is standing back, high-low heel, the upright foot stands back a little bit more in here, and then look at the toe area of the upright foot. It's going to be flat with depth to the commissures. So in that case, you can actually change high-low heel by trying to stabilize the bone movement here. See, this bone's pushing in here every time it walks. Remember, there's tissue under here, but between here and the top of the sole. But when the horse walks, this is what's happening inside the foot, and the foot's following it. So the bone will go down a little bit in the toe, and then all of this is getting pulled up in the back part of the foot. If it's different stride, different lower pasterns, or more sloping shoulder, we have a different scenario taking place here. But so if this is constantly doing this, pretty soon you might see bruises developing on your toe. But and picking up a little bit of a toe bend like here. So if I raise the heel on a foot like this, it's the worst thing I'd want to do, because now I can get this here. I'll raise it up and push down. See, now I get this severe toe bend. So you're damned if you do, or you're damned if you don't. Upright pasterns that have the worst pathologies in the foot, rather a horse that's, you know, a little lower pastern. There's a range in there. You can always pick out the extremes from upright pasterns and low pasterns, but there's a range that kind of comes together in here to where it's very hard to pick things up, and that could be anywhere from 48 to 54 degrees or whatever. So there is a range. There's tolerance in there that we can work with, where it's not going to do much damage. But it's when we get out of that range is when damage really starts to occur. So before I go to here, does that kind of help understand? You're going to see, I'll show you the mechanics do drop soles or bone damage, because today all I want to do is focus on this, because you can do anything you want to the outside of a horse's foot and make it look good. It's very hard to keep this bone looking good, and this is where the trouble starts. If it's red, it bleeds. If it bleeds, it's probably gonna have sensory nerves. So let's watch this just for a few minutes, and we don't have to go through it all. It's Michael Savoldi again, and I'd like to welcome you all to these little discussions. Pathology can be cooped up in the house. I gotta find something to do. Anyway, I hope you're all doing well. Today's discussion will be altering the plane of the P3 bone. Your take-home message will be pathology can be based on the plane of the P3 bone. So let's start with these two important areas, the plane of the hoof capsule and the plane of the third phalanx or P3. So when we look at a hoof capsule, of course this one has been trimmed to the sole plane, and when we look at the hoof capsule, we can say that the plane of the hoof capsule is set by the trim or how the foot naturally wears. That's an important point to remember, because as the natural wear in the foot develops, over time, the plane of the capsule will change. The plane of the third phalanx, or P3, is set by the sole arch combined with the trim. So there's two things involving the plane of the P3 bone, how the foot has been trimmed, and also what type of arch it has within the capsule. Okay, do you have any questions about that? Because, like I say, the plane of the capsule can be altered by the trim by leaving length of wall beyond the sole plane. So if it's less length, 2 millimeters of wall length here, this is trimmed to the white line, and this is 2 millimeters of the wall here, then you've altered the plane of the capsule, which in turn will alter the plane of the P3 bone. So that moves with the trim, or body weight alone can change the plane of that P3 bone. So for a moment, I would like to talk about footfall, or how a foot is landing on the ground. So we watch a capsule, we watch the foot land on the ground, and sometimes if we don't like what it's doing, we can alter it or change the trim so it will land flat. But I think what's a little more important is how the skeleton or the P3 bone lands on top of the sole. And in doing so, it can alter or it can cause a lot of stress or damage to the bone and the sole body, the dermis, etc. So we should keep in mind that horses know how their feet should land.
Oops, what happened?
But if they should have a foot problem, they're like humans, they will alter their landing. And we need to be aware of that when we're thinking about trying to force a foot or dictate to the horse for how its foot should land. So here we see a distal phalanx. This bone shows a level edge through this area.
It's
And then if we go a little further, we can look at the rear portion of the bone, partially the palmar process combined with a little side bone. So it is common for the P3 bone to show stress in the heel area, right? All this area here. It's usually, you can see inflammation when you dissect feet. You'll see swollen dermis and inflammation, and that inflammation does attack bone. In this particular foot, we see some side bone. Normally, the bone would be from this, the end of the palmar process would run right through this area, coming down and around through here. All of this at one time was ungual cartilage, and now it's becoming side bone. It's stressed. Okay, so all of these show some signs of side bone. All of these feet, very common to happen because this is the heel area is a heavily stressed area, and you can see all the damage that's taking place just in this heel. None of this surprises me. Bone after, unless it's a very young horse, they're going to have stress in the heel area. So.
Isn't that a movement area though?
Well, we talked earlier about how if the wall is pulling away from the bone, it's going to tear the sensitive tissue that's between bone and wall. That's, if it's pulling away, that's tension. And this side, all of this damage, because it's a low angle, I would say the wall's migrating away. So the bone could be setting down. This is a front foot, but a lot of hind feet, this would be a lateral heel.
But like on loading, when your bone's loading into the bar, Doesn't that cartilage kind of bulge?
Well,
with it?
remember that when the bone pushes down on the sole, the bottom of the walls move out, see?
Mhm.
Then when they recoil, the walls, so you have this movement. There's several different movements. You even have this movement.
Right, but
Yeah.
on the top, like more at the upper part of the wall where the side bone is happening, doesn't that cartilage kind of
Flexing.
move out?
Mhm.
So how does the
It
side
does
bone?
bulge out because, well, it depends on ground too, because let's go back to a barefoot foot that has no constraint. The ground, a normal ground will give you friction, okay? That's why everyone has this idea of sliding over the shoe, it should not slide. That's why putting a little bit of a pad, even if you want to keep to a rim, it will stop that sliding that does this way. It should go this way because of the friction. So that's one way to do it. Because it depends on what point of the impact of the foot you do. And of course, there's up and down a little bit, like Mike was saying, and it opens up a little bit. Like we could go to that discussion also, how much heel movement you have, because essentially you should not have huge amount of heel movement, because otherwise you make the bar very weak, you know, so.
And that's the stress that causes the side bone?
It's bone moving up and down and
Right.
walls. Length of wall creates leverage for the walls to go this way. You can drop sole a horse with length of wall. The bone, usually drop soles are associated with bone pushing into the sole, which rolls it. Gives you a little roll and then it'll lift out a little bit and sometimes even lift up some. If you trim level all the time, if you trim like traditional farriers are taught, you won't see any of this stuff. It's very hard to recognize it. But when you trim following the white line, now you see all the distortions, you know. But you have to be careful on trimming. Our job is, like I say, I don't have rules when it comes to trimming. My rule is, what can I do to help the horse this way? I can alter what I do. Most of the time I probably want to leave a little foot on it too, to protect it. Because there's vibration. Well, I just got off track, but vibration is very interesting. You know, when you cut nails with your hammer, you see some people use a hammer with a composite head to cut nails. Racetrackers use it a lot because that's vibration. Well, more vibration. If I just use that hammer theory, I'm going to use a hard hammer to cut my clinch, and the horse is doing this, and I can use a composite hammer to cut my clinch. Less this. There's a good example of this material versus this material on a horse's foot. This is a lot easier as far as the horses pick all that up here. They feel it all if they're sound, you know. Okay, so these are all side bone, just naturally occurring stuff. Where's my mouse? Come on, baby, get down there and go. Pathology in the toe area. If you look at our foot up here at the top left-hand corner, we have a nice level bone through the toe and through this area. So when we look at just bone, a full bone will be rather a little straight in this area. It will not be very wide. In the toe quarter area.
A little straighter angle.
A young bone is straight here. When this broadens out, there's a
This
reason.
bone is demineralizing. This is starting to lose bone. And we need to understand why it's losing. It will have very wide hoof capsule maybe in this scenario. So the shape of the hoof capsule will be rounder in those toe quarter areas. Elastitis is attacking this bone. And so we can see by setting the bone on a horizontal platform, now we can look at the pathologies and how much bone is missing. This bone is full. This bone is missing quite a bit of toe. Now, why is this developed? Because it's the position the bone has on the whole body. So Wolff's Law, bone in a healthy person or animal will adapt to the loads under which it is placed. So we really, we really don't need a lot of expensive equipment to understand that a bone in a positive palmar angle can be detrimental to a horse if we just look at the pathologies to the bone. Now we have a heel portion to the bone, and it also can have pathology. So we see very rough edge coming through here, extremely rough edges, and this is common. There's nothing new about this. It's a highly stressed area. And this we could say is osteopenia. Osteopenia shows all these little spaces in bone, or little cavities or grooves in bone. That's bone demineralization or changing. And then that bottom of this foot that's missing. And then
Okay, I use the words osteopenia and osteoporosis. These are on an observational view. That's would fall in the category of this one, osteoporosis, because of all those big grooves and cavities you see there. That could be debatable because we're not quite sure how much that we're dealing with, but this foot is actual bone. So
And
the side bone can develop
we're
osteopenia and
also
osteoporosis.
exposing some
laying
osteoporosis
down calcium.
through this
Yeah.
development. Now
Exactly.
osteoporosis will weaken bone, so we should be careful on
Side bones, stress tissue.
what we do.
Protecting itself.
I'd like to say we're trying to advance our industry into a more modern farrier science. Textbooks don't really cover a lot of this information. They have a lot of hundreds of years of information, but we are trying to move our industry into the internal portions of the foot. Like I said previously, it's important on how the bone lands on top of the sole. So let's grade pathology. By putting our foot on these bones on a horizontal plane, we can see that this edge is level, this edge is missing in the toe, and this edge is missing in the heel area. Now let's look at some interesting things about morphology. First of all, look at the angle of our pasterns, of our DIP joint. In this angle, and this angle. Again, they're all horizontally plane, so now we can get a good example of bone development. Which bone is the upright pastern? Let's look at this angle right here. So this horse would have an upright pastern, most likely a straighter shoulder, and a short toe. The toe is a little short, and there's a little bit of forward lift to the toe. This is just the opposite. Look at our angle to our DIP joint or a coffin joint. This is a lower pastern horse. It has a much longer toe. It's a full toe. It's also developing a little bit of a bull nose. You would see that on the hoof capsule. So you will see a little maybe lip on the hoof capsule on the bottom, migrating forward on this one. And this one you would see a bit of a bull nose on the hoof capsule. It all has to do with conformation and also how the foot is trimmed and how the horse is standing on its foot. So bone position on the arch. We'll go back and discuss our arch for a few minutes. Here's a horizontally planed hoof capsule. That's this area. This represents the plane of the hoof capsule and with a horizontally planed arch. And when we place the P3 bone, it's somewhere close to a horizontal plane. Now, if we have a flat toe arch with deep commissures or a deep heel arch, our bone will be in a positive palmar angle. Then just the opposite if it's bones in a backward pitch or a negative palmar angle, all due to the arch. Now, these drawings have been exaggerated, greatly exaggerated, I might say, just to make the point, so we can get an idea of a forward pitch, a horizontal forward pitch and a backward pitch of the P3 bone. Pathology based on the plane of the distal phalanx. So let's start with weight pressing into the arch. Remember earlier we said it's important on how the bone lands on top of the sole?
Thank you.
So it also is important on the plane of the P3 bone and its relationship with the sole body. Here we have, get this cursor working again. So here we have a horizontally planed P3 bone setting or resting on a horizontally planed arch. It's very hard to find this type of situation because gravity always wins, and as horses start to move around and get body weight, the arch can change. Now we can go to our forward pitch or our positive palmar angle, and we can see that this
Is that a
arch
Yamaha?
is collapsing in the toe. So what are these effects? If we
There's a
have a
model
foot
picture of a
similar to this, if we
But
trim
yeah.
to the sole plane
Usually
and
more-
radiograph
there's
the
a
foot
mass
and see that we
rate
have a
on
bone in a forward, in a positive palmar angle within that capsule, then we can look at pathology, and this can show a very mild. If we should raise the heel, I think I just lost my cursor again. If we should raise the heel, we can see that more stress is put on the toe and the pathology grade will increase. And then when we happen to, the foot may weaken, have a problem of inflammation or swelling or heat, then the bone can release from the tissue that's stabilizing it, I should say, and we can have more damage to our hoof capsule and to our P3 bone. The pathology grade can greatly increase. So if we're talking about a laminitic foot, with this type of arch, it would be, we should think about raising the heel in a laminitic foot when it has this type of arch, because we've all seen this. We've all had the experience of the bone coming through the sole and the toe with a wedge pad and raised heels. So let's keep that bone position in this particular demonstration.
It's a loading thing, it's just stuff.
Bone movement. So we have the cannon bone for an up, or it's common for an upright conformation or the distal phalanx P3 to be in a forward pitch. So we have a descending load from the skeletal system, moves the P3 bone into the sole body. We demonstrated how pathology is telling us that's happening. And then P3 can slide forward and downward through motion. As the limb goes into motion, we can get this type of movement. So the bone is descending into the toe area, flattening the toe arch. And then eventually we could end up with a P3 rotating into the sole body, causing the heel arch to deepen. Now we can look at a negative palmar angle and weight pressing into the arch. Starting with our horizontally planed P3 bone, everything's good pitch, shows that we have a collapsed heel arch. The problems that develop here is if we start with this type of, we're back to a horizontally planed hoof capsule, but our bone position now is altered. It's altered because of the collapsing arch, and we can see mild pathology developing. Here we have a raised heel, and we also can notice that why is this happening? Because this picture right here on top shows that there's damage occurring based on bone position. And when we raise the heel, we're simply moving the top of the sole into the lobe. So we should expect more stress or more problems. Again, this stuff doesn't have to happen, but it's set up to happen. And then eventually when the foot finally breaks down, we can get a downward bend in our sole plane and in the heel area, and increase or more severe level of pathology developing within the foot. Bone movement, here we see the descending load from the skeletal system moving the P3 bone into the sole body. And if you notice, it's a different movement. That arch is showing us that there's a different movement occurring in the foot versus our upright pastern. Then as the bone descends into the heel area, flattening the heel arch, causing the toe arch to deepen. The P3 bone has a push-pull movement. So if it's pushing in the toe, it's lifting in the back, it's pulling up in the back. If it's pushing in the heel, then it's pulling up in the toe. So the harder these horses are loaded in the heel, the movement can cause the bone to deepen the toe arch and build a stronger bull nose within this foot. It's all a prolapsed heel area. So we must be careful on how we evaluate our feet. We should be careful when using wedge pads or raising heels because they have detrimental effects to the internal portions of the foot. and they may help in biomechanics and make things look like they're moving smoother, but modern farrier science wants to take us inside. We're going to take a trip inside the capsule so we can see really what's happening. And so I hope thank you again, and I hope this little discussion helps. And one of these days the sun's going to be shining and I'll be outside having a good time.
Like today.
Don't worry about me. This is a good time for me also. So thank you again.
Mike is coming only for the food. That's how we bribe him. Get out.
Yeah, it came from the sink. Monique, it was in Monique's freezer. It's probably been in there a while.
A lot in the freezer.
Yeah.
I lost, I would still be doing a lot of this stuff, but I lost my, I can't get legs anymore. I used to get them.
Nice little hammer. I like that.
Thanks. It's brand new.
Is it?
Used it for like a week and a half
I
now.
just broke it in for you. I don't know if you guys have ever noticed, but if you have a horse that has really collapsing heels like this, when you go to pull the shoe off, if you grab it right back here at the heel, they're gonna be like, ah. So I try to grab up here, get that shoe off. I don't grab all the way back at the heel. It's so shallow right there. Yeah, and you're putting a lot of torque with these pull-offs. Enough to pull the shoe off. So, thank you. Appreciate
Do you
that.
have a wire brush?
We're saying that this is in the wall, all right? Because the tubules compress. They compress up and down, and they compress towards the inside. So, and see, this is why I resent. See, what people do, they put the shoe over here. This is already collapsed, and thinking that the wall length is becoming the shoe, but you can't do that. This is like crazy. That's damage beyond repair, and the caudal area is damage beyond repair. You know, this is bad. So anyway,
Okay, but right here's the signs of a drop sole. Right there. See how it's, yes,
Yeah,
the
you
white
can see
line is
also
further
this.
up here.
do you see how it's shoved?
It's wrapping around the
Yeah, you
bone.
could have a quarter crack eventually here.
Yeah, we just talked
This
about
is
that
fairly
one.
shiny tissue right here.
You
It
did?
usually follows the
With
pattern
me?
of
You
the
talk about the good
of the
stuff when you're
stresses
not around.
taking place
Well,
here.
that's obvious. I mean, talk about your quarter crack.
So, shall we trim it? Is that what you want to do?
Yeah, go ahead, and I think they should see what a drop sole is all about.
Okay.
Okay, well, just before you do anything, just clean this out so we can identify. Okay, this sole would be probably good enough to leave alone, you know, but we're gonna clean it down some.
It's on, I've
How,
done-
how would you like me to trim this? You just want me to clean it up? You want me to do what we do in the lab, or do you,
right now I want.
No,
you
go
do what we
ahead, I
do
mean,
and-
they should see it, what happened.
Yeah, I just
I mean,
want
you know,
to be able
personally,
to identify this. So
Before,
just find
before
white
we
line
do
this time.
anything, okay, let's look at that, because that's the discussion. What, can you grab a shoe that would be the size of this guy? It's
Which-
probably a one,
Or a steel shoe or a?
no.
let me spit my shoe out?
Composite shoe. Because that's the problem you're gonna have if you put my shoe on. There's nothing you can do. You can't trim. This is not a trimmable foot, right? So, you see what I'm talking about, putting pressure.
Oh, yeah.
All right, this is a collapsed frog, and this is, if it was alive, I probably could put my finger practically through it, unless you're in very dry area, you won't. So, you know, you're gonna have no other choice for the first showing. I'm gonna have to wash my pants, this is not good. For my first showing, to actually, you know, make this very soft, and then use the glue to compensate for that problem, because as Mike was saying, that you cannot trim that foot if it was a live horse. All right, and again, orientation to here, and probably this guy, I would probably give that support to eventually bring everything back. But that's what I'm saying, when you have
Too
this,
late for him.
what? Yeah, it's too late. But everyone takes the heel way behind the frog. You can't do that. You know, a frog plane, it's not just a plane. This area, that's where you have the frog sling. You have your pressure sensors. You have pain receptors, and you have the fascia. The fascia is also a receptor that tells the horse how to load. So when this is not working, I don't care what we do, you're going to have a problem, all right? So, and I'm going to teach a class on myofascia, and the research has been done with the myofascia in the back. But I would put the foot, you know, the shoe here, and then again, the frog does, it's lovely, you can see all those nice shoes with a tick in the middle. The frog does not align if you go through that with the middle of the foot. It doesn't bisect in half.
So where would you put different amount of glue in one place
Right
than
now, I
another?
would do protecting. All I want is to train this to come back here. It will go naturally because the frog, when you do an extension with the glue kind of act like a nail extension. So eventually, in 1 or 2 shoeing, all that is gone. But they will be painful. So if you use that type of shoe, you need to use the glue to rebuild the heel fake, you know, and the fake heel till it comes out. And I would absolutely, this is not a trimmable. You cannot trim a foot like that. There's nothing to trim. It's damaged. So, and you're gonna make the horse really sore. The nice thing with the metal shoe, they don't feel their feet. So you can get away with much more shit that you can with this. Because that is equivalent of going barefoot. So you can't trim, you know, you should not trim that. Don't you agree? I would not
Yeah,
trim.
no, I would.
I would rebuild. You
Arch
rebuild.
support, arch support, arch support, and that foot.
Well, you can't. Some horses, when they're that painful, I don't even put a lot of packing because they can't even take it here, and they can't take it here because everything is dropped. So you might have a little bit, and you'll see you don't have a lot. So you put a little bit of packing and work around it. This is why you use your point and work around it, and just let it be, you know. And that rebuild that, and I have pictures in about two trimming, all that is back where it belongs, and I don't have to aggress the foot. That's why the glue is nice. So anyway, you guys, you can take that poor beast. But I would not even put this way. I would really bevel it, you know, and just find an average.
Like we did in one of the horses.
Yeah, the thoroughbred I have is, you know, he has poor thoroughbred feet in the hind. So if I don't, I mean, it's not like that bad. But when I got him, and he was barefoot because I let him barefoot when he rehabbed. So, because you see, the foot goes into compression. They compress too low, right? So you don't want to perpetuate that. So wherever they are tipped, that's why I always, for me, the frog plane is the first. Because that's where the healthy stuff, everything wraps itself around that. What? You want some food?
Is it harder to trim because it's dead?
Oh, yeah. Don't make him feel bad because he goes slow. What is it?
No, I didn't mean that.
Can you go faster?
It's harder to trim because I haven't done this in a while. I'm like, crap, what am I doing?
See?
Forgot.
What is wrong with you?
No, that's not how I meant it.
No, I'm just.
No, yeah, I know. Yes and no.
Okay.
I
The
have
easy
only-
part about
I
it
have
is I can
another
kind
one.
of
You
do,
need
I
to
can
use your cup.
move it
Because
around.
I
When you're
can just
first
install it
starting out
from the
trimming
thing.
dead limbs, it's
Because I don't
difficult
have
because you kind of, you don't have the horse behind you to
Right.
stabilize the foot, so it wants to walk around a
Yeah.
lot. It's a lot safer, I know that.
The vet injected is.
Yeah, you see how
Hard
this
white
is
line
all
to find,
protruding out here? The
That'll
white lines
help for a
way
few
up here.
months.
Yeah, well,
So
especially
this
if they
soul's
put
done. This
steroids in
should
it,
be-
it's not gonna do
That's what they
anything.
did, yeah.
Yeah,
If he
that's
cleaned this out here, this angle
actually
should
creates
just be a
secondary,
nice angle going in, and it would be at the
arthritis,
toe.
No.
Or
Now, the
thunder,
deeper
because
this
if
is, the
they
more
are
bullnose the foot will
borderline,
have. See?
you know.
Do you want me to
Over here.
do you want me to clean up the toe?
Deeper what is?
Well, first,
You want me to-
Monique,
Yeah.
okay, we've discussed, like, if this was a horse and we were gonna shoe it today, it'd be just like this with the shoe. Forget what you're saying, you just put the shoe on it.
Well, it depends on the x-ray. We should have actually got the machine. That was stupid.
Because I wanna have Brady clean the sole out to start identifying things.
Yeah, well, I'm personally, I would, because see, the problem is, because of those compression in here, you don't know where the foot is gonna shear or change, so that's why I don't touch anything. Because I would remove the flare, you know, and then you can see things, but
Well,
the
good point.
hoof will morph itself over itself. That's why you can only average a foot around whatever you decide to average. That's why I use those points, because there's no predictability where the foot is gonna go. And I would protect this area and make it much more comfortable, because that can't be very comfortable for the horse to be like that.
No.
The
Did-
wall should be at the height of the frog, not below the frog. You should absolutely never have walls that comes down like that. This is very painful for this area. And that's where you have all the pain receptor and the proprioceptor. It's a pad, so you can't do that. Then when you continue also feeling, what is it doing? Like, feeling the frog like this, you're actually taking down all the stay of the frog. It's a very complicated thing on the inside. So me, I try to average things around that plane, and knowing that there's one heel higher than the other, and things will morph itself much nicer than you know.
So the question is, can we detail the foot out now for the sole?
Well, I mean, you can do whatever you want.
Did you notice?
He's
when-
dead.
All
I
right.
don't care.
Did you notice when where Monique's hand was when she said she would remove the flare? Did you notice where her hand was? Stop.
Outside.
Okay, you want me to touch it
Look at the
again?
drop sole, right where your hand was. Because
Right.
drop soles
Yeah.
cause flares.
All right.
Okay. Okay, another thing to look at are cracks on the sole. This crack will bottom out on the hard epidermal sole. Now, just shave this crack down a little bit. Just shave it off till it ends. There. See, so this is where I would stop if I'm looking at detailing the foot out because that's hard epidermal sole. Now, if it's a very serious crack, then you may penetrate the hard epidermal sole and then get the sole pretty thin. So that's just a guide you can go to stop whenever you hit the crack. All of these cracks show movement in the wall. If this foot, if it had a severe crack going or cracks going this way, it would have heels, because when you raise the heel up, you get this bend here. Well, that bends here, and that would go this way. If you have cracks running like this one, here and here, that comes from flexible heels. The heel's flexing this way, causing this crack here. Stress fractures to a crack are perpendicular. So if you have cracks through the bar area, it's usually the bar is being loaded. That could be a couple things. Cracks in this area here along the bar means that the bar is being loaded. It's loaded either from the semilunar ridge of the P3 bone or at the navicular bone at the mid-stance face. There's tissue between them, but that pressure is being put on the bar, and so the bar is pushed outward, and that causes that crack this way. And that's a precursor to chips in your navicular bone on the mostly on the lateral side, but they can be on the medial side.
But the chip to the navicular bone too, because the collateral cartilage, again, the collateral ligaments where they tie, that if you trim for symmetry and stuff, you're actually putting those 2 points. And there is a paper on that. It will put those collateral ligaments on the stress. They've just done it in New Zealand. You know, a bunch of engineers and for the Department of Veterinary stuff, they did the modeling. That actually confirmed what I'm thinking about how the position of the navicular bone is. It's not symmetric, neither is the pedal bone inside the capsule. There's not such a thing as that. So your plane is not, I think it's not.
Well, that could be, the bone actually at static could be level, but through movement it can crush if it's landing on the lateral side.
But if you don't follow those points and you don't understand how to bring not the bottom part but everything to remove that shearing, you're actually putting those
stressors out there.
Well, yeah, because you have to take this consideration on the collateral ligament that attach to the navicular bone. This is actually a little more. That's why I think trimming is difficult, because people never point out any of this stuff. So it's easier for people to go one thing at a time. And the bad thing with the hoof, this hoof in a month is completely different.
Yeah.
And everyone get hung up on one time, one moment in time. You know, it's the same thing with writing.
Yeah.
They apply the same thing over and over, but it doesn't fit anymore.
Right.
You know, so it's where and it's hard for people to think dynamically and in 3 dimension. You know.
For sure.
There's also the soles in layers, and so this crack here, right here is a layer.
I touched
Just
this
shave
thing.
that crack to this
It's not
layer.
that bad, but you know.
These layers are handy to know for abscesses, cleaning out abscesses. Because most of the time when someone cleans an abscess, they use their knife like this.
Yeah, and they like.
And it only takes a second to, see, most abscesses, the soul's in bundles. I think it's growth spurts, when it stops to regenerate. There's a thin bond here between the bundles. It's weak, and that's when they slough off, it's at that weak spot. And then they grow again and get another bundle. And most abscesses are right below that very first bundle, and it's that thick. So just a little bit of pressure on your knife will just cut right through and get blood. But if you learn to just shave down through, like shave this layer down to here, to that crack. So if you just shave down till you get to your abscess, just shave it away and drain it.
So how big of an
shouldn't
area
really
would
hit
you?
blood.
How big of an area would you shave?
Well, it depends on how big a hole is
But
in your
people, the
abscess.
vets go to town.
Yeah, they do.
Oh
Yeah,
yeah.
they
I
overdo
mean,
it.
they make,
Yeah,
I mean,
they make holes.
yeah, they make holes like not just a little bit, you know?
First thing I asked, the vet came out, popped the abscess. I go, did you get pus or blood? Oh, he got blood.
Yeah, yeah.
Another thing, I just lost it there, but abscess. Oh, there's two types of abscess. Soul abscess is different than a bar abscess. Bar abscesses will bleed, where soul abscesses don't usually bleed. And they're different forces. Soul abscesses are through this kind of movement. Think of these as plates in the soil in our ground. So when we have an earthquake, they shift. Well, that shifts up close to the sensitive, that will shift, and then it'll start to get fluid in there. But a bar abscess is more compressive load, pushing down on the bar, causing it to bend outward and flex and then break.
But-
This really building, this tissue here is just telling us that it's a stressed area right there. If it was a heavy toe callus in here, look at the heel, you'll see more heel. If it doesn't have a callus here, it probably won't have much of a heel in the toe. Here's another sign of stress, is that yellow color. Like you see this yellow color in the toe. The darker yellow it is, the more the stress.
Try it towards us, here.
Oh, sorry. You guys don't need to see.
Oh, she needs to see.
I know. I'm just kidding. Sorry.
So this right here is darker yellow in the whole body. So that's telling me is a sign of stress. The next color would be red, and then the color after that will be black.
You ever see that?
Oh yeah. There's 5 colors in the soul,
At least.
if I can remember them all.
Kidding.
There's like, or
white
let's
and
just say the white line. There's
I've
5
seen-
different colors
yeah.
in the white line. This bar is collapsing here. It's being collapsed from the inside out right through this area right here. There's a hump there. I'm looking because a lot of times you can see shifting of tissue. Those color things at one time, because dark marks on the soul come and go. And so I wanted to try to figure out if it's pressure necrosis or pigmentation. So I literally tried to track, like I said, I don't know if I said this today, but the soul doesn't have tubules. It has sockets. The wall has tubules. But the soul, so the socket, as it grows down, then it gets into the drier part, it pinches off and looks like a tubule. So a winter socket can be deeper than a summer socket. So you might trim a winter foot longer if you're trimming to the sole plane, the epidermal sole, because the winter sole will be wetter, so that socket increases in its depth. And a dry sole, you can get a shorter foot on a dry sole because the socket has receded more.
Where that socket pinches off, is that the layer of sole?
Well, that comes down through the sole layers. It's a little socket in there, and it just kind of grows out.
That's
Yeah,
more like
because
a-
the
Each
wall,
one of the
the wall
sockets.
is called a composite, because basically you have a plywood that comes from, plywood-like, that comes from the sensitive laminate, and what goes through, it's in my book, I mean, that's pretty well defined by any biomaterial person. They've done it, it's not me inventing that, you
I
have
don't
the
know what else I
coronary,
wanna do with
coronary
this thing,
band
but
not
this
that has
is
the
dropped from
tubules, but they
here
go
all
right
the way,
through.
deep
So
here.
basically,
but from
it's a
here all the way
plywood
to
with
there,
reinforced
dropped
with some
pretty
mesh.
deep. This one starts, right about here?
That's
maybe?
why you can,
But see, this,
but some people cannot
there's
stop.
so little wall on
They
here,
have
it's
to
really
go
to
the
get a good
clinic to
view of what
have
we
a-
wanna see.
Yeah.
But this wall length looks like it's longer than this wall length, so the foot's this way and this way.
I feel like there's more distortion on this side. than
And you
this
can
side.
all see the damage right here. The vasculature in the hoof.
Much easier when you have it in a vice.
So he met the guy at the university that knows how to do that, and he's teaching Charlie.
Cool.
Okay, we were talking about the hoof the other day, and the layers of the hoof wall. See the thickness of this non-sensitive lamina leaf? Each one of those represents a layer of a hoof wall. So they flow. This tissue is developed in the secondary lamina, and it's just a liquid that flows out and bonds together, and then it makes your wall wrap around the foot.
Yeah, let's put it down on my knee there, John. There we go. There we go. She's a dry one.
Well, you know, it's a she for one thing. Hey, could be a he,
It could be
an it.
an it.
It's just giving him a lot of problems right now, so he
Yeah, it must be a she.
It has to be a she.
It has to be a she. There we go. Now we're gaining some ground, John.
cool.
Let's see if we can. Yeah, there we go. Perfect. My phone's gonna ring off the hook today.
Popular guy.
I have a rule that if your phone goes off during the lecture, you'll owe everybody a beer.
There's your capsule.
Let me see that before you go too far.
There's real soap over there. So you
Yeah.
just need to wash your hand.
Okay, now let's pull the sole off.
Is that easier? Was that the hard part?
Yeah, sole's a
That's
lot
really
easier to
that's
pull
really
off.
hard.
Fresh, yeah, somewhere in there.
Which
I don't
one?
know. This has probably been in your freezer for what?
A year.
Year, yeah.
Yeah, it's much nicer when you have them fresher because it's
Fresher the better.
it's this is dry as hell.
Well, look at the corner cushion. The corner cushion is white. It's dried out.
This one I'm just trying to nurse off because I don't want to
No.
rip or break the sole.
When I do clinics, and there might be some veterinarians there, they just are standoffish until I get to this point, and they just kick right
Well,
in.
they love
Yeah.
blood.
Yeah. They're heading for the
Well, leave it this
radiograph.
way for us. Oh, it's too late. I was gonna take a picture.
Real. Let's see. Okay, this yellow
Keep your
tissue in
flex
there is
turning.
interesting.
Attaching to the bone. There's your digital cushion.
Okay, your next
Part of it's on that frog.
Yeah, your next job is to cut the digital cushion out.
Okay.
Is that the yellow? That's the digital.
So, Mike, you know the latest now.
And
We
this
s-
Okay.
is the dermis too here. See, that's a separate layer of tissue that's attached to the bone, the dermis here.
Right here, it's got a strong toe arch, but the whole heel arch is collapsing, so this would be a negative plane P3 bone on the radiograph, or either horizontally planed or negative planed, depending on how the foot was trimmed. Because if I had heel on it, then it wouldn't be the correct plane it is in the foot based off of the radiograph. And you can see how it's all crushing in here and here, and then look at the damage that we see here and here. This is what happens. This is what happens when the sole wraps around bone. So now this is going to start losing bone in this area
Right.
here.
Yeah.
Remodeling bone.
Look at like the dermis is almost a little.
Well, it can be puffy and inflamed.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's this side right here. And then you can actually see, you can see all the crushing here and here, and then on this side, all of this damage from here to here, you can really make it out over here too.
Yeah. Look how much lower the bone is on this right here.
Okay, and then we were talking
From the
about
top
the
of the
bars.
white line.
Yeah, see, these bars have very little height to them at all. There's just a crushed commissure. So you gotta get the depth of the commissure back, get these bars straightened up a little bit more, and get the depth back.
But don't you think once it's damaged like that, that you can help a little bit to
Oh, you can help them. See, that's another thing we could talk. See this on your frog? That frog was all filled in.
Forceps.
But this angle right here is wrapping around the navicular bone right here. And this angle will have different variants. If it's an upright pastern, this will be a steeper angle. If it's a low pastern, this will be a low angle. And you'll see it as on your flexor tendon when you get this cleaned
If I
off.
don't butcher it up
Because
here.
this is wrapping around the navicular bone right here. So if you
I
want
don't
to know about where the navicular bone, you just look at where the tissue is wrapping around.
See that? How my knife's underneath
Right,
that?
that's it.
That's the deep digital flexor tendon. This whole width of tissue,
Okay.
and this
that
is
was
it
my
connecting to the bottom of the coffin bone.
But
See
then
that?
where would the suspensory be?
I'll tell you what
It'd be
you do.
underneath
Okay.
this.
Yeah.
Cut this back and open
Okay,
it up.
yeah,
and
let's
grab
do
the
that.
deep flexor tendon and pull it.
Yeah, we'll do that. Yeah, that'll be a good view of that.
There's two ways you can go through the navicular bone. You can go on top of the deep flexor or underneath the deep flexor. Depends on what you want to see.
Well, the suspensory don't tie to the bottom.
Yeah, go up as high as you can, as long as it's
The
cutting like
suspensory
that.
ligament.
Okay. Your suspensory ligament comes down, then it branches and comes around this way
Yeah.
and touches over. So when you raise the heel like this, see how all this gets really tight in the front?
Sure.
And those suspensories just get like guitar strings.
Well, you can't see
But
it
when
in
you
the
lower the
X-ray.
heel, those all soften.
You
and
can
get
see it
longer
right here.
Oh, you can?
Yeah.
Let me see.
Yeah,
See that?
look what
See that?
happened.
And then watch, bring that footlock back up.
Uh,
Tight.
Well, basically, when you put a wedge pad, you're telling the horse, because you have a lot of neurotransmitter also in the navicular bursae, you're telling the horse that it's already at mid-flight, because it's already kind of picking up that flight. So you're changing the proprioception of the
Take
horse,
that
and then
off
you're
up
forcing the
somewhere
horse to
into here.
compensate
Okay.
somewhere else
Okay.
for that flight
And then
pattern.
just,
But to
No,
be
we'll do
nice
all
to
the
the
skin.
okay, okay.
vet trying to do that, what they have seen, they get more comfortable around the navicular bone because you're supporting the arch, but you should not support it with an angle. So it's not completely crazy, you know. I can see why they think it helps. I always try to see why they think that way. I mean, sometimes you can't figure it out, but I think there's something to
There's
say
a-
about that.
Artery or a vein?
That's a nerve. You have a artery nerve and a vein in there. It's van, V-A-N. So if it's flat and dull in color, it's a vein, and if it's round and dark in color, it's an artery.
There's an artery.
Yeah. So you
Which one
Well,
does
clean this
which
down
again?
some
I
more.
forget.
clean that down some more, and you can.
Wonder why.
This is the movement I was talking about. Here's your branch to your suspensory. So when you lower the heel, you see how, raise the heel, you get very tight.
Yeah.
So those little yearlings out in the field running around, sometimes these will be just sticking right out of the skin. You lower the heel and they'll have heel. Lower the heel and then they'll soften up. And then for another thing about raising the heel is you can't really see the main extension tendon very good.
Well,
but
it
that-
doesn't
that
the
tightens up.
suspensories tie into the extensor?
Mhm.
Yeah.
And then that tracks it all the way down, and most of the time they
yeah.
attach to the
And another thing
the
before you
bone.
start, look at how actually the extensor is not straight in the middle of the, it's
No,
not.
it runs off. to
It
the
runs,
side,
yeah.
So we have here, this is our main extensor tendon, and there's our lateral extensor.
Yeah.
So it's the left hind, I would say. Looks like a hind for sure. Yes, sir.
Yeah.
I was gonna
That's
say, we have
the great thing
a
about the
question here on
mastitis
this
cream
foot.
is you just.
The question
Yeah,
was,
but you
should
taste
we
it and
wedge
then
it
put it
up?
in a
Well,
syrup.
think
Oh yeah,
about
yeah. That's a good
No,
idea.
it's not-
That's
What's
a good
happening?
idea.
What you
Yeah.
have.
when we wedge it, we already have damage here. So when you put a wedge pad on, you're moving this into the load. It's already loaded, so you're putting it more into the
Oh, I
load.
know,
Yeah.
This is what you need to do.
Brady?
Instead of
Yeah,
doing
Brady.
this, you clean this out and pack it
Ooh,
really
my
deep
back
and
just
strong.
popped doing that. Felt good.
You have to be careful. Too much packing will make them sore.
We're saying,
Right to the bone.
right to the bone, yeah.
Almost an amputation.
Okay. First tendon we're gonna cut off. Superficial flexor tendon. Right?
Yep.
Please correct me if I'm wrong.
No, you're
You
right.
tell me. You tell me what it is, and you ask.
So this
It
is
wraps
gonna
around.
this ligament is gonna eventually branch off, right? The superficial flexor tendon.
Yeah, it's gonna
Or
bifurcate
tendon.
and
Yeah.
come around on both sides there.
Oh, right down there.
Yeah.
Okay.
of a sudden we got all the flies.
Yeah, no. No, I think it's really us, we stink.
They're
this
just like
is-
layered.
That's
right
all
on top of
annual
each
ligament.
Yeah,
here,
just
huh?
go ahead and cut through that. I wanna see,
Okay.
once you get that off, I wanna see the deflection
That's
there.
just more
Okay.
connective tissue right there
Yeah,
on top.
yeah.
So is there a fascia in between those two?
Yeah, there's always it's think about anything that is hanging in your body has this bag-like things everywhere. I can't find my book, but there's this beautiful dissection where they went through all the myofascia, and you can see it. It's like you could put all
It's
the
like you're
junk.
taking the chicken skin off.
Yeah, but it's throughout the entire body.
Is that what keeps them able to move independently?
Well, it ties everything together, and not only that, it has trains. So, for instance, like me, who hurt myself here, it starts changing because some people don't quite believe that there's myofascial train. Now, people who do myofascia, but in general, you have train and it goes in coils. So, if you have you have lateral bands and you have also diagonal bands, and it goes like here to here around. And I don't have my book. I'm pretty sure it's in my house. But next time I'll show it to you. So
Is
it's,
that what you're talking about, like independent of other anatomy?
well, it's its own organ,
Yeah.
all right. But it ties everything together, and because it has piezoelectric capacities, it will talk to each other. So if we are tight here, and if we take a band that goes to in a diagonal one, you hurt yourself here. This is going to do something also from that side. It will pull there too. So that's why I think it's far more complicated that people think about, when they look at movement and other things, so it's,
This is Michael. Am I cutting through right now?
A little collateral ligament found out through there.
So the one that you're holding is still the superficial.
Yeah.
Superficial. This is the deep digital.
Okay.
And the superficial is gonna bifurcate here pretty soon.
Sometimes
Gonna
this
what?
Connect.
it moves in
Bifurcate.
divide
Yeah.
and divide and go
by
into two parts.
divide. How many horses?
Well, depends on if
Trish is
Trish is coming.
There's your deep
Otherwise,
digital.
5.
What?
5.
5?
Ash can be in the first.
Superficial, deep
So
digital.
Ashton's coming at 8:30?
See, that's
No, he's coming at 9.
More connective tissue after that.
Is that for Monday?
Yeah.
This is like a, oh. Michael's tired of me sissy-footing around with this
But-
thing.
How many legs have you dissected? He can do it in his sleep.
I know, I know.
Don't feel bad. I mean, it's,
I don't think I realized before how thick they were.
yeah.
You
And
can
they,
hang a car engine from that thing
they
from the roof.
Yeah.
they give tensile strengths. See, this is
I
what
knew that.
no, but to the bottom part of the foot, it's holding the navicular bone too.
Right.
So it's not just the movement, but it's also,
Is that better?
that's why people don't understand. If you have a foot that is flattish, but you have a very big
Okay.
digital flexor tendon, it might not be so bad because it
Right.
gives that support, because it's holding. You'll see it goes all the way
There's a
down.
bunch of synovial fluid.
Okay, now you can just kind of cut.
See
follow
this
that
fluid
back.
right there?
Oh yeah.
That's
yeah.
synovial fluid. The navicular bone, yeah? Would that be, or just,
No, just go ahead and cut this down,
Yeah, I
and
want to see the
then the
navicular
navicular
bone.
bone's gonna be.
yeah, we're getting there. We're getting there. I'm not much of a butcher as Mike is.
Well, Mike gets mad at you when you
Can I
leave,
see?
not you, but when you leave, because I used to do my
The tendon.
dissection at this place because John doesn't want me to keep any shit like I
There's
dissected.
the navicular bone.
And I leave hair
Okay,
in
come
things,
on,
and I would take
yeah.
pictures,
So you
and
want
Mike
me to
would
just
say,
cut that out?
don't tell
Yeah,
them
get it
that
out
was
of there.
Cut the bone
my dissection,
out.
because it has
Cut the
hair in
tendon
it.
out.
So he would
Let me
take
see.
tweezers and he would remove the hair,
There it is right there.
This is your collateral ligament.
Okay. Oh, okay, okay.
Yeah.
You can go right here maybe, or on the bottom, doesn't matter. There we are.
There you are.
Okay.
So you just know right where to go.
Yeah,
Son of a
well.
bitch. That's your navicular bone. See, your deep digital flexor tendon hugs that navicular bone really tight.
Yeah.
So that was
Yeah,
the
you're
deep
right.
digital.
Yeah, yeah, it
that's
goes
your
all the
navicular
way.
bone.
To that semilunar area
Okay.
of the pedal bone.
See this little erosion here on
Right.
the navicular bone?
The pink spot?
Yeah.
This is sagittal. It's hard to get in here without forceps, but the deep flexor tendon runs over here, so you wonder why is this running this way? That erosion is going this way instead of going along the sagittal ridge because of the deep flexor tendon. Well, the deep flexor tendon fans out right here and attaches to the P3 bone.
Right.
So when it's loaded, it gets stretched this way, and that stretching movement this way will wear a hole in here,
That's
Okay.
why some of them holes are more
and then
oval,
clean.
right?
Well, they're more oblong, yes, oval.
Yeah.
But that's why is they're
Right,
getting
okay.
aware from the flexor tendon stretching this way, so it moves two directions over the navicular bone.
Okay.
Now, if you can cut this out, we want to
Okay.
see the bar.
All right.
And you see the collateral ligament to the navicular bone attached to the distal end of the first phalange, which has a 7-degree twist. This is not attaching just evenly.
Which
So-
collateral ligament?
To the navicular bone, there's two collateral ligaments to the navicular bone, and it attached to
It
the,
goes up to P2?
to
Well, it
P1.
runs along the navicular bone right here,
Yeah,
and then it comes up and comes around and attaches.
I have a dissection from that.
See, I want to see what you're getting there. I want to see this part of the navicular bone and in its relationship to this part of the
To the bone.
P3 bone,
Okay.
yeah.
Okay.
Because that's where they chip.
And that's where we get bar cracks from loading?
Your bar crack usually will be in the same area, but what's happening is, like here, I'm surprised this didn't have a good bar crack because see how this is getting pushed down here. The initial push is off the semilunar ridge of the bone.
So this is our navicular bone, like right here?
Yeah, your navicular bone would be running, well, it would be making this dent here.
Okay.
This crush is coming off of the P3 bone, and this crush back here is off the navicular bone on mid load.
And what you guys didn't see, we just cut through it a second ago, is there's a tendon that runs here to here. That's the suspensory
Okay, right,
ligament to
that's
the
right.
navicular
See,
bone.
this is me putting
Not a
the string
tendon, it's a
gauges
ligament.
on the,
Suspensory
Right.
ligament. Yeah. Yeah.
that's,
Yeah, you can take like those mountain horses and grab their skin, and it's really movable.
Mhm.
They have a lot of fascia, a lot of thick fascia. They have thicker hoof walls, thicker soles. And you can take a tight-skinned horse, and it's really thin fascia. It doesn't move
Doesn't
hardly
move at all
anything.
from, yeah.
Yeah, and they'll have thinner walls and thinner soles. And they're not
Should view of the
sure.
joint.
Oh, whoa.
Fetlock
look at
joint.
that.
They're not sure that the
Jeez.
proximal sesamoids is actually a bone. So they're looking into that now.
Yeah.
That's crazy. It's all just tendons and ligaments in the legs.
One big pulley. That's what it
Making a
is.
horse go.
One big pulley system.
That's
Yeah,
wild.
Don't go too far on that. Do the other side, because I want to lay this
Okay,
open
okay.
before you cut it off.
Before I go all the way
Ranger,
around.
you
I
don't
want
want
to see if
that.
there's a floater in there. Upright
Was that the
pasture is
collapsed
that
sole
tissue
side?
like fetlocks, or the
What side was that?
pastern joint on an upright pastern horse. It's just like a solid piece.
Oh yeah, that was the
That's
gnarly
probably going to be
side.
the lateral side. Is it?
The side that
I
had
don't
the
know.
most
Remember your
stress.
ligaments. What do we say it is? Remember your extensor tendons.
Yeah.
That's getting stinky.
So,
Amazing that
Where's
that's
your
that
lateral
heavy.
extensor?
my lateral extensor.
Right there. Here's your main.
Yeah,
Here's
there's
your
your
lateral.
lateral. So it's a left hind.
Is that what you said?
Yeah.
Left
You
hind.
said it not too long ago too.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of difference in movements when you do a wedge pad on a
Okay.
horse. Like if,
No floater.
no, you gotta it'll keep it going until that just folds like
Okay.
a pocket knife, but don't cut it.
So there's more synovial fluid then?
Yeah, that's similar. Keep going.
And
yeah.
that all just lubricates the joints or?
Okay, sometimes these joints will pick up a little, they call it a floater, it's a little bone in here, it chips off and then it's just a little round bone. It can be in varying sizes, but it can be very irritating for horses.
Because
But
they'll
that,
want to remove those. a
yeah,
lot of
they
times,
can remove
yeah.
them. So, but that
Yeah,
joint's,
it's all
except for
no-go for
this
you.
on the bone, that joint's pretty clean. We're
Yeah.
having the same thing here,
Yep, same little spot.
pretty clean joint.
And that would be where the sesamoids ride, right?
Well, put it back together and you'll see.
Yep. Look at the sesamoids.
You can go ahead and cut that off. No, I just,
Okay.
when I dissect, if I go from the front in, I lose too much information. So I usually go from the back, front towards the front.
I don't ever really wedge, but I had
Cannon
one
bone.
last week.
Oh, the
that,
wedge, yeah.
Crazy.
We were talking about that.
The extensor process was like maxed out. That joint was like jammed
Wait.
up, and
Well, that's what I said. Did you see when I pulled it this way, how the
Heavy.
extensor process got so tight? But tissue, when you're under a horse, flex the foot. Flex
Sesamoid?
it this way and this way. Make sure you let your hands
Bigger
tell
than I
you
thought it was.
how flexible it
Sesamoids?
is.
Yeah.
You know.
There's a lot
And
of
then
tissue
on
on
the
that.
stiff,
though.
after a
Right, I
while,
can see,
it'll
but I can
just
still see the outline.
Yeah,
tell you,
yeah.
this
I
is
was
really
thinking they
tight.
were
You don't have to
more
think
like
about it.
that.
No,
moving
no,
to
no,
the
no.
joints, just
Yeah.
moving
Soon
the
as you
joints,
pick
yeah.
the
I photographed a bunch
Yeah.
of
Do this
sesamoids,
and
which
this,
was
don't
really a
worry
neat
about it.
study
I try to
that
do
Mike's
that. I
got
try
going
to
on.
flex the heel.
Probably
Yeah.
100 of them.
After a while, you
Very
start to know
stress-bound.
this is really
Yeah.
tight.
Yeah.
You can
Where
almost
this is
see.
really loose.
Yeah.
Well, on the tight ones, when
But
you
I
put a
remember what
wedge
he
pad on
fractured
a
was
tight
that apex,
joint,
just a
you're
clear,
changing
like-
stance.
Mm-hmm.
The foot will
Mhm.
probably come back on you.
Well, we did
No, I
100
If
of
it's
them.
really loose and you
No,
do a wedge
he
pad, you're
was a
changing the joint.
Thoroughbred
the
had
coffin
gotten off the
joint.
track, because he had a bowed tendon on
So there's
the,
two,
left
really
front
two
leg.
different movements, so why
And
are
then
you doing the wedge pad?
9 months into the
I
rehab,
did
he
with the
did that
back,
on the
and it was
right hind
'cause
leg.
that
Oh, wow.
extensor process was like jamming
Yeah,
up.
but see,
and
the
we wanted
That's
extensor
pretty much when I gave
process,
up on
you
it.
didn't want it, you don't wanna tighten that up.
You guys want to see the fetlock joint?
Sure.
Yeah.
It was a
Or
really
the,
good
pastern
on the
joint?
hind foot.
Oh, okay. Oh,
Okay,
but you
good.
know,
So here's your
the
your
more
main
you raise
extensor.
the heel,
Right
Right here,
you lower
see
the
that?
I
fetlock.
see that.
Can you see that?
So you get more of a bend like this.
So what's that doing?
This bend like
That's
this.
allowing that foot
If I
to
raise it
extend.
here, my
And
fetlock
it
goes
attaches
up.
right to
When
your
you lower
extensor
heels,
process,
you
to your
notice on
coffin
the
bone.
radiographs, you get much better posterior alignment, because when you lower the heel,
Knife
it
that
goes
out.
like this. Raising drops the fetlock, lowering raises the fetlock. No, I really can't find a good use for wedge pads. If
Here's
temporary,
a branch
maybe,
of your
but see,
suspensory
the
that
defects
comes
are
down and
temporary.
ties
that
into
side.
your
All tissue is supposed to be
ties
under
into
tension.
your extensor.
So if you're gonna
tendon.
take the tension off of
See if we can
ligament
detail that out.
or a tendon, the body's gonna naturally adjust it to get it back on tension. So when you raise the heel,
Karen, your poor
according to
face.
Demois,
I know,
Every
I
time I
can't
look at you,
control
you're
it.
like,
Tighten
oh
it.
my god, this is just gnarly.
so it's back on tension again.
I'm sorry. I'm not